I'm Arielle Gordon. It's such a pleasure to be talking with ESPN's Emily Kaplan. Emily, our series is all about who you are, not what you do. Yet everything I see is about your do. I noticed there isn't a Wikipedia page about you, but if you were to make one, what would the first sentence be?
Wow, that's a really good question. I've never heard that question before, Ariel. That's a really, really good one. I think it would just be basic. Emily Kaplan is a sports journalist with ESPN, and she loves bagels. I think the one thing that makes me unique is I just love talking about how I hate bagels everywhere besides New York and New Jersey. So I would maybe that would be in the personal life tab.
And you're a self-described bagel snob. What does that mean, and what sort of bagel should I be eating?
You can eat any bagel on the East Coast, I think. So if you live in Maryland, which you do, I bet they do okay bagels there. I just live in Chicago, and when I moved here, I was just so disappointed by the quality of bagels. I found them disgusting. They are dense and small and not the type I was used to growing up in New York and New Jersey. So it's kind of been a running joke with my friends. They always try to get me to eat bagels here and think I'll like them, and I never do.
Have you ever tried to make a bagel?
I have not. I don't trust. Honestly, I think the issue is the water. I think if I was in the East Coast, the water is a secret ingredient.
And as we kind of begin this NHL season, are you going to be going up to Canada at all?
I still don't know, which is one of the fun things about sports journalism, but also the frustrating thing is a lot of unpredictability. So I'm not going for the beginning of the tournament. They're hoping for me to go later. But that's soon, especially because there's a 14-day mandatory quarantine for anyone coming from the US who has to cross the border. So I've been very zen about it, but I'd like a little clarity soon.
If you go, are you bringing bagels? What else are you bringing?
It's funny. I have been living in my studio apartment the last 5 months, so I feel like I've gotten really used to being self-sufficient in a small space. So I'd probably bring my workout bands so I can get some workout in. I've been doing a lot of yoga too as another self-care. So some kind of, maybe even just like a yoga block. I don't even know if I would need a mat. Face masks are also good for self-care. So if you can see, the theme here is, traveling on the road can be really stressful, and being contained in a small space can be really stressful for a long time. So just things that could help me be kinder to myself.
And as so many of us are kind of starting our careers, things are a little uncertain. Is it possible to have a job and a life? How have you kind of worked through that?
I think that's one of the most difficult things, especially early in your career. Like when you're in school, they teach you all the things to be a successful professional, but you never really learn how to have a work-life balance. And to be frank, I think it's something that's so individualized for each person, and you have to find the right balance. And, for my first couple years out of college, my early 20s, I definitely immersed myself a little too much in work. And I do think, my social life, I was really flaky to friends. I probably couldn't create the best relationships. And now I think I do a much better of just trying to create boundaries and block time out for friends and family where I can really unplug for work. Now, that said, it's still really difficult, but I think I've done a better job.
If you could create the next NHL expansion team that you're the owner of, where is it going to be, and what's the name?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Just because we just had the Seattle name their team the Kraken yesterday, and I was like, that's a really good name. I would love to see a team in Europe. I think that would be incredibly fun. And I think with, when we're not in a global pandemic, the way global air travel has gone, I think it could be feasible. So maybe, Sweden or Finland would be a natural fit, because I think there really would be interest in those countries. They could fill the arenas. It would be super unique. Maybe we go to Helsinki. And Helsinki's known for saunas. So maybe it would have some kind of nod to that. I can't think of a good name.
And great news, you also have the first pick in that expansion draft.
Oh, great.
You can take any player. Who are you taking?
Oh, I would easily take Connor McDavid. I think he is the most dynamic young player in the game today. And if I was building a team around anyone, it would be him.
What do you want to see the team do from a media standpoint?
I want to see them be really accessible. I think one of the things that prevents the NHL from being as successful as some of the other leagues in North America is just a lack of promotion of the players and their personalities. And, we really need to know who these guys are off the ice. And default is just to deflect attention. So I would have my guys out there doing interviews with GQ, with Vogue. They would be doing appearances on reality shows. They would just be showing off their true, authentic self. And I think that would really help with our marketing and branding efforts.
Talking to the Emily outside of the NHL, you spent some time kind of in the football world. What is similar and what's different in this beat?
What's similar is, I think, when it comes down to when we're covering these people, they're all human beings and they each have a personal story. And so even though football players and hockey players are a lot different, they come from a lot different backgrounds, they look different. If you get to know who they are, you understand that there's a lot of the similarities in their core, that they're competitive people, they're athletes, they're really passionate, they've got a great work ethic to get to where they were. And the difference is, I think it's kind of what I was talking about earlier. It's just the way that they promote themselves. If you walked into a football locker room, you'd have no problem asking a guy, hey, tell me about what makes you great. And he'll tell you what makes him great as a player. In hockey, they would just start spewing off things like, well, my teammates give me good passes and it's all a team effort and that kind of stuff.
And what makes you great?
That's a great question. There's one quote that I've always followed in my career. I think it was the New York Times columnist Dave Anderson originally said it, but be a respectful pest. And I think about that one a lot because I think with this job, kindness can go a long way, and just having empathy and understanding. So that's what I think of being respectful. But also you have to be really relentless and persistent and pursue your goal. And that's the part about being a pest. So I think if I use that as my guiding principle, it's what's led me to success.
And kind of balancing being a pest kind of in person in the locker room versus texting, emailing. How do you use technology and what limitations does it have?
Yeah, it's a good question. So much of my job now is relying on that. You sometimes DM people for sources or like say, hey, like that's how I'd set up an interview or something like that. I think being a female specifically, especially because we're dealing with male athletes, there's different rules for us, right? Like I don't text guys after dinner time because you wouldn't want to get the wrong idea. You wouldn't necessarily get into like a long DM thread with someone that maybe a male reporter could. So those are some limitations, I think.
What advice do you have to someone like me who's kind of coming into it, is a little bit newer?
Yeah, I think it's just to have conviction. And that's something that's really hard to develop, and it's much easier said than done. But it's a belief in yourself and a belief that you are talented and there's a reason that you have that job and you can do it. Because I think a lot of times when you're in this industry, people will try to discredit you. Men will get jealous. They'll say you're only where you are because you're a woman, or this is the only reason you're interested in this. And as you know, probably a lot of that is untrue. So if you just have a strong belief in yourself, and then the other piece of advice I would 100% have is get a support system of female friends who are in similar boats. They don't have to do exactly what you do, but they have to understand what you do, because you just need that network to, fall back on.
You could tell Emily on the day of her college graduation kind of some advice or what might be coming in the next 10 years, what would you let her know?
That's a good one. I think I would tell her that advice about creating a network of female friends. I think I was always surrounded by guys in the industry, and those were always my colleagues, and they're great. And I have so many great guy friends. But to have those strong female relationships is something I didn't discover until my mid-20s or late 20s. And I really think it would have helped me the first couple years out of college.
If someone is just to hear Emily, what do you want them to think of before they get to meet you?
That's a good question. Something about me is I think I'm quirky, right? Like I don't think I'm like anybody else. I think I'm pretty unique. But I lean into it and I'm authentic to myself. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of. And I'd like people to see that in me as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.